Dear God, my name is Kodak and I am 11 years old. I am from a small village that's in need of a lot of things. Please send someone to help my family and the people that live in my village.
Prayed Kodak to God before she climbed into bed. As Kodak slept nestled in her bed, she had a dream of a rainbow that came from the sky and touched the ground right before her eyes. There was a soft whisper from heaven, saying, "This is my promise to you. One day, you will be great in your village." The next morning, Kodak remembered her dream. She raced out of bed to write it down so that she would never forget it. Kodak was excited as she pinned it on her wall of faith board. Suddenly, she became confused and asked herself,
What does this really mean?
Kodak was excited yet confused about her dream. Kodak kept it to herself because she didn't want anyone to know. As Kodak walked to school, she couldn't help but ask herself,
How could I ever become great in a small village?
When she got to school, she couldn't help but get upset after receiving her test paper from her teacher. Kodak began to question God silently, asking,
How could I ever become anything other than a failure? I can't even pass a test.
She dropped her head and let out a miserable sigh. When school was over, Kodak walked home in silence as she began to recall the dream that she had the night before. Suddenly, a smile came over her face. Kodak began to use words of affirmation to herself. She quietly began to repeat to herself,
I am somebody. I can do this.
Her voice began to get stronger as she became more confident in herself. Soon Kodak was screaming with joy.
I am somebody, I can do this.
At that moment, she made a vow to herself that from this day forward she would study harder to make good grades. As soon as she made it home, Kodak began to study for her next test. Kodak knew that she had to prove to herself that she could do it. She believed that one day, God's promise would come true, so she wanted to be prepared for that moment. Kodak could hear her friends playing outside of her bedroom window every day, but she kept studying. She didn't want to lose focus. Her parents would enter her room daily and they would encourage her to keep pushing. One day, Kodak's friend, Baylor, walked into her room and read her Wall of Faith board. Kodak's friend told everyone else, and they laughed at her and said,
God will never make you great. How can he?
Baylor mocked her and said,
You're just Kodak and you can't even pass your tests.
Kodak tearfully walked away with her head slumped in between her shoulders. She looked toward the sky and asked God,
Why me? Why did you choose me to make great in my village? Now everyone is laughing at me.
Kodak heard a soft whisper saying, I chose you before the beginning of time. I will keep my promise to you, and one day, you will be great in your village. As the days passed by, Kodak would keep her vow and study every day. Her grades began to get better and better. Everyone could see Kodak's improvement. Finally, on awards day, the teacher presented Kodak with the Principal's List Award and said,
Good job, Kodak. I knew you could do it.
Kodak smiled and raised her award in the air as her classmates began to chant her name in excitement, Kodak, Kodak, Kodak. In the midst of all the noise and excitement, Kodak heard a gentle whisper from within that said, I will forever keep my promise to you. One day will you become great in your village.